You wake up in the dead of night. A sharp, pinching ache radiates just behind your belly button. You try to shift your weight in the dark, but the pain does not fade. It begins to travel. It moves slowly, deliberately, down toward the lower right side of your abdomen. You touch your stomach. The muscle is completely rigid. Every time you take a deep breath, a shockwave of agony shoots through your core. You reach for your phone on the nightstand and search your symptoms. Within an hour, you are sitting under the harsh fluorescent lights of an emergency room. An ultrasound confirms the worst. You have acute appendicitis. You are wheeled into an operating room. A surgeon makes a tiny incision, removes a swollen tube of tissue, and sews you back up. A few days later, you are back home, slightly sore, but completely alive. For 99% of human history, this wasn't a hypothetical. This precise biological failure has existed inside the human body for millennia. But for roughly 300,000 years, there were no emergency rooms. There were no sterilized scalpels, no ultrasound machines, and absolutely no antibiotics. Today, appendicitis strikes roughly 1 in every 1,000 people every single year. It is one of the most common abdominal emergencies on the planet. So, what exactly happened to your ancestors if that tiny organ turned against them? What did a prehistoric human do when the pain started? Before you can understand how an ancient human died from an appendix, you have to understand why they even had one. Well, you have probably been lied to about your own body. For generations, biology textbooks have taught an arrogant narrative. They told you the appendix was a useless evolutionary mistake, a vestigial remnant left over from millions of years ago. They claimed it was a ticking time bomb with no actual purpose. This is completely wrong. Your appendix is not an evolutionary accident. It is a highly specialized survival tool. In 2007, a team of researchers led by immunologist Dr. William Parker at Duke University made a groundbreaking discovery. They looked closer at the microscopic structure of this tiny organ. What they found changed the understanding of human survival forever. The appendix is actually a biological safe house. Your digestive tract is filled with trillions of microscopic bacteria. This is your microbiome. It is the invisible engine that digests your food, regulates your immune system, and keeps your body alive. But in the ancient world, your microbiome was under constant attack. Imagine you are a hunter-gatherer living 40,000 years ago. You are drinking water from a stagnant pond. You are eating raw, scavenged meat left behind by a predator. Pathogens are everywhere. When an ancient human contracted severe dysentery or cholera, the body had only one defense mechanism. It had to violently flush everything out of the digestive tract. This purged the deadly pathogens, but it also purged all the good bacteria. The gut was left completely barren, vulnerable to deadly secondary infections and starvation. This is where the appendix comes in. Dr. Parker discovered that the appendix is tucked away just off the main flow of the large intestine. Its narrow, winding shape is perfectly designed to be a microscopic cul-de-sac. During a massive gastrointestinal illness, the good bacteria hide inside the appendix. They wait out the storm. Once the illness passes, these beneficial microbes emerge from the appendix to rapidly repopulate the gut. They reboot your entire digestive system before you can starve to death. For an ancient human, having an appendix was an incredible evolutionary advantage. It was a microscopic backup generator. It saved your ancestors countless times, but there is a fatal flaw in this brilliant biological design. A safe house only works if the door stays open. The entrance to the appendix is incredibly narrow. All it takes is a tiny obstruction to turn that safe house into an inescapable prison. In modern humans, this obstruction is usually a small, hardened piece of stool. Once the entrance is blocked, the disaster begins. The bacteria trapped inside the appendix do what bacteria do best. They multiply. The appendix begins to swell. It becomes engorged with pus and infectious fluid. The pressure inside the tiny organ builds relentlessly. This is the moment the pain begins. Imagine you are an ancient human on the prehistoric savanna. You are walking with your tribe, tracking a herd of deer across the dry grass. Suddenly, you feel a deep, sickening ache in your midsection. You try to keep walking, but the pressure is cutting off the blood supply to the walls of the appendix. Without oxygenated blood, the tissue of the organ begins to die. It begins to literally rot inside your living body. The pain localizes. It stabs violently into your lower right quadrant. You drop to your knees in the dirt. You curl into a tight fetal position. This is an instinctual reflex. Your body is trying to relieve the mechanical tension on your abdominal wall. Your tribe gathers around you. They cannot see the microscopic war raging inside your abdomen, but they try to help. In 2017, paleomicrobiologist Dr. Laura Wyrick analyzed the fossilized dental plaque of Neanderthals found in El Sidrón cave in Spain. She found traces of DNA from the poplar tree trapped in their ancient teeth. Poplar bark contains salicylic acid, which is the exact active ingredient found in modern aspirin. She also found traces of penicillium, a naturally occurring mold that produces penicillin. Your tribe might have boiled this bark. They might have forced you to drink the bitter tea. It might have dulled the pain slightly. But herbal tea cannot stop a mechanical blockage. Your digestive tract has completely shut down. You vomit violently. A soaring fever takes hold. Your heart is pounding against your ribs, trying to pump blood to an organ that is already dying. Within 48 to 72 hours of the initial blockage, the breaking point is reached. The dying tissue of the appendix wall simply cannot contain the immense pressure any longer. It tears open. It bursts. The relief is instantaneous, but it is a horrific illusion. For a brief, fleeting moment, the excruciating pressure in your lower right side vanishes. You might even take a deep breath. You might think the worst is over, but you are already dead. When the appendix ruptures, it dumps a massive payload of pus and aggressive bacteria directly into your sterile abdominal cavity. The human body is an incredible machine, but it is not invincible. When the appendix bursts, it is essentially a biological dam breaking. Introducing millions of aggressive gut bacteria into this space is like dropping a biological weapon inside a sealed vault. The infection spreads like wildfire. This is a condition called peritonitis. The thin membrane lining your internal organs violently inflames. Your entire abdomen becomes as hard as a wooden plank. This is a biological reflex called guarding. Your abdominal muscles clench uncontrollably to protect your highly sensitive organs. The bacteria rapidly seep into your bloodstream. This triggers sepsis. Your immune system launches a chaotic, nuclear response against your own body. Your blood pressure plummets. Your kidneys shut down. Your lungs fill with fluid. In the ancient world, a ruptured appendix was almost always a guaranteed, agonizing death sentence. It was a slow, burning end that took several days of unimaginable suffering. Bioarchaeologists have spent decades studying the bones of human ancestors to understand how they died. Experts in paleopathology look for the silent signatures of disease etched into the bone. Syphilis leaves sponge-like holes in the skull. But acute soft tissue infections like a ruptured appendix leave absolutely no trace. The infection kills the host far too quickly for the bone to react or adapt. When an ancient human died of peritonitis, they left behind a pristine skeleton. Their agonizing final days are entirely invisible to the fossil record. This paints a terrifying picture of the prehistoric world, a world where every human was walking around with a microscopic time bomb in their gut. But here is the ultimate, counterintuitive twist. Did your ancient ancestors actually die from appendicitis? The answer is almost certainly no. Appendicitis was exceptionally rare in the ancient world. In fact, it is largely a disease created by modern civilization. For centuries, medical texts barely mentioned appendicitis at all. It wasn't until the late 19th and early 20th centuries that appendicitis rates suddenly exploded across the Western world. As the Industrial Revolution transformed society, hospitals filled with young people dying of bursting appendices. Why did this happen? The answer lies in what humans put in their mouths. In the mid-20th century, an Irish surgeon named Dr. Dennis Burkitt spent decades studying rural populations in Africa. He observed people living traditional, agrarian, or hunter-gatherer lifestyles. He noticed something completely baffling. These populations had virtually zero cases of appendicitis. It practically did not exist. These ancient foragers did not have access to soft, easily digestible meals. Every single day was a jaw-aching exercise in survival. They consumed massive amounts of wild, uncultivated vegetation. The microbiome inside an ancient human was incredibly diverse, breaking down this fiber with brutal efficiency. Dr. Burkett realized the difference was not genetics. It was dietary fiber. Your prehistoric ancestors ate an astonishing amount of fiber. They consumed upwards of 100 to 150 grams of fiber every single day. This massive intake of roughage acted like a biological broom. It kept food moving through their digestive tracts incredibly fast. The stool of an ancient human was bulky, soft, and passed quickly. There was absolutely no opportunity for a hard, calcified piece of waste to form. There was nothing to get lodged in the cecum and block the tiny entrance to the appendix. The Industrial Revolution changed human food forever. Society invented steel roller mills. Factories stripped the outer bran away from natural wheat. Civilization created refined, white flour. It mass-produced processed sugar. Humanity entirely removed the fiber that humans had eaten for millions of years. Suddenly, human digestion slowed down. Stool became harder. Constipation became a normal, everyday human experience. And the appendix, a safe house designed to protect your body, became a trap. Modern society engineered its own biological failure. But let us assume the absolute worst. Humans are biological creatures, and freak accidents happen. Perhaps an ancient hunter swallowed a parasite, or perhaps a tiny, sharp seed lodged itself in the entrance perfectly. What happened to them then? There is a persistent, toxic myth about the ancient world. Modern culture likes to imagine early humans as brutal, callous, and perfectly utilitarian. Society assumes that if someone fell violently ill, the tribe simply abandoned them to the wolves. Survival of the fittest. The archaeological record proves this is a complete lie. Deep in the Zagros Mountains of modern-day Iraq lies Shanidar Cave. Here, archaeologists uncovered the remains of several Neanderthals who lived roughly 65,000 years ago. One skeleton, known to science as Shanidar I, completely rewrote the understanding of prehistoric empathy. Shanidar I had suffered unimaginable trauma early in his life. He received a crushing blow to the left side of his skull, leaving him partially blind. His right arm had been severely shattered and amputated above the elbow. His right leg was crippled by advanced trauma and painful arthritis. He could not hunt. He could not defend the tribe from Ice Age predators. In a brutal, utilitarian world, he should have died in his youth. Yet, his bones show intense, long-term healing. Shanidar I lived into his late 40s or 50s, an incredibly old age for a Neanderthal. He survived for decades after his devastating injuries. This means only one thing: his tribe cared for him. They chewed his food for him when his teeth failed. They carried him when they moved camps across the frozen tundra. They protected him from harm. This profound empathy is what makes the human species unique. If your appendix burst 50,000 years ago, you were not left behind to die alone in the dirt. Your tribe would have stopped their migration immediately. They would have gathered around you. They would have built a fire to keep your shivering, feverish body warm. They would have wiped the sweat from your forehead and offered you water from an animal skin bladder. They would have stayed by your side, watching over you, until the sepsis finally took your life. You would have died, but you would have died surrounded by your people. But biology is unbelievably resilient. You are the direct biological product of millions of years of survivors. And your human body has one final, desperate, spectacular trick up its sleeve. It actually has a built-in, natural surgeon. Inside your abdomen, draping delicately over your intestines like a fatty apron, is a large fold of specialized tissue called the greater omentum. It is completely mobile. It is highly active. When the omentum chemically senses severe internal inflammation, it literally crawls toward the source of the danger. It moves across your internal organs like a living blanket, actively seeking out the source of the biological fire. When your appendix violently ruptures, the omentum acts as a biological first responder. It wraps itself entirely around the exploding, infected appendix. It aggressively binds to the surrounding abdominal tissue, creating a tight, physical, watertight seal. It effectively walls off the rupture, physically preventing the lethal bacteria from spreading throughout your entire abdomen. Instead of a fatal, widespread systemic infection, your body manages to create a localized, heavily contained pocket of pus. This is medically known as an appendiceal mass. You are still incredibly sick. You are still radiating a dangerous high fever, but the immediate, systemic threat is paused. You are not dead, not yet. Now, the battle becomes a brutal, agonizing waiting game. Your immune system throws every single white blood cell it has at the walled-off abscess. You lie in the dirt for weeks on end. You lose massive amounts of body weight. But your tribe refuses to give up. They keep forcing drops of water, bone broth, and crushed, bitter medicinal plants past your dry lips. Eventually, the immense pressure inside the walled-off abscess has to go somewhere. Sometimes it takes a miraculous, life-saving internal route. The abscess can spontaneously rupture directly into your large intestine, safely draining the deadly infection out of your body entirely through your natural digestive tract. Or, in more extreme cases, it can actively burrow outward. The highly acidic pus can erode its way through the thick muscles of your abdominal wall, eventually erupting directly through your outer skin. It is gruesome. It is a horrific, painful, and terrifying process. But the deadly poison finally leaves your body. The intense fever finally breaks. You open your eyes, look weakly at the warm sunlight filtering through the green trees above, and you suddenly realize you are going to live. Do we have actual hard proof that ancient humans survived massive, life-threatening internal infections without any modern medicine? We absolutely do. Deep inside an ancient cave system in northern Spain, there is a legendary archaeological site known as Cima de los Huesos. It translates directly to the pit of bones. This dark cavern contains the fossilized remains of ancient hominins dating back over 400,000 years. Paleopathologists studying these ancient, scattered skeletons have found extraordinary, undeniable evidence of brutal survival. They found skulls with severe, widespread, rotting bone infections surrounding the teeth and jaw. These were massive, systemic bacterial infections that had spread deep into the porous bone structure. By all modern medical logic, without potent antibiotics, these severe infections should have easily spread to the brain and killed the individuals instantly. But the bones tell a different story. The bones show clear, undeniable signs of profound healing. The bone tissue actively remodeled itself over months and years. The massive infection was completely defeated. Your prehistoric ancestors possessed immune systems that were astonishingly aggressive. They were forged in a relentless crucible of constant exposure to immense bacterial threats. Their bodies were actively capable of fighting off microscopic biological wars that would easily overwhelm and kill a modern human. If your omentum successfully walled off the burst appendix, your prehistoric immune system was genuinely strong enough to slowly, painfully finish the job. You would undoubtedly carry a deep, jagged, permanent scar on your abdomen for the rest of your natural life. You would likely suffer from lingering, chronic pain and tight internal scar tissue. But you would survive to hunt again. You would survive to forage for another season. You would survive to successfully pass your genetics down the long, unbroken evolutionary line. Look back at the ancient world, and you see primitive danger. You see a harsh landscape, devoid of modern miracles. And yet, the very organ that doctors casually remove today was once the invisible shield that kept humanity alive. The appendix is not a mistake. It is a monument to human endurance. It protected your ancestors through countless bouts of contaminated food and toxic water. It held the microscopic seeds of life when the body was purged by disease. It was only when civilization tamed the world, when factories processed the food and changed the environment, that this biological shield became a sword pointed at your own stomach. The modern world created the exact conditions for the appendix to fail. But in a beautiful, redemptive twist of human ingenuity, That same modern world also created the hospitals to fix it. Civilization outsmarted the very problem it accidentally created. You wake up in the dead of night. A sharp ache radiates just behind your belly button. You touch your stomach. You grab your phone, only this time, you do not have to wait for the fever to take hold. You do not have to hope your tribe builds a warm fire. You simply get up, get in your car, and go to the hospital. You know exactly how lucky you are to be alive,